Hello, wizards, witches, and everyone in between. My name is Emma, and today I am showing you the classics that I have read. So there will be, I was going to do a combined video, but there's going to be a separate video of classics that I want to read, just because this video got a little bit long. Okay, so this is kind of tying into my latest common room discussion video about classics, and I love a good classic. I think in general, like, who doesn't love a good book? But I wanted to share my thoughts on the ones I have read. So I don't have like a comprehensive list of all of the classics that I've read. And I'm not going to get into like children's classics like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Alice in Wonderland. I'm going to stick with like adult classics. I mentioned in my wrap-up, I have now read The Outsiders twice. That's kind of a young adult classic. The Giver's kind of a young adult classic. So I'm just gonna stick with like the old stuff, like what you would think of when you think of classic. So I just wanted to say that because I might leave some out that I have read, but you know, Goodreads wasn't around when I was in middle school, so who knows who knows all the ones that I've actually read. Okay, so first I'm going to talk about the ones that I have already read, and this is in no particular order or anything, but the first one I have read is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I have read this twice. I read it in high school, and then I read it for a class in college, and I'm not going to get into my ratings on any of these also, because some I don't think I've rated because I didn't have Goodreads back then, and also like if I reread them now, maybe my opinions would change, so I don't want to like be like, this is what I think of it, and then later be like, no it's not, like in terms of like a star rating. So just generally, I found this to be disappointing. I was really hoping for like a spooky, fast-paced kind of thriller thing, and this is not fast-paced at all. I don't think I liked it any more the second time I read it. I would probably give this like a 2.5. Would I read it again? Sure. It's fine. I mean, it's also like 200 pages, so it's not super long either, but I expected more from it. Next is The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. I might have rated this actually, but I'd probably give it like a 3.5 or a 4. I have read this twice as well. It's an early feminist story, honestly. I mean, just by the quote on the back, it says, "The Scarlet Letter was her passport into regions where other women dared not tread." So it's basically about, well, there's two horrible guys in it, Chillingsworth and Dimmesdale, and this lady, Hester Prynne, yeah, she has, you know, a big scarlet letter on her dress, like publicly shaming her. Her name's Hester. It's kind of like, you know, she learns to accept it and learns to be a boss-ass bitch, honestly. She, like, gets back at the people who wronged her. She, like, breaks out of what society is telling her is wrong and shameful. And it's a good time. So I would definitely recommend this to people. It's definitely one of my favorites. Next is The Awakening by Kate Chopin. I have only read this once. I've actually been wanting to reread it. It is a book about this lady who realizes that she deserves more. There's a little bit of a theme here in terms of the classics that I've read. She's stuck in the role of mother and wife, and she doesn't want to be stuck in that role anymore. And we had some heated discussions in my high school English class when we read this, that really brought out the sexist side in a lot of people that I knew. But it's a good feminist time. Would also recommend this as well. This definitely, the writing and like the language in it is a lot easier to get through than The Scarlet Letter. Next, arguably my all-time favorite, Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. I've said it once and I'll say it 1,000 more times. The Hours by Michael Cunningham is my favorite book ever, and it is based on Mrs. Dalloway. and Mrs. Dalloway is one of the characters in it, and Virginia Woolf is also another character in the Hours. It's kind of hard to explain that book, like, quickly. But, so obviously I read the Hours first, fell in love with it, fell in love with the movie, and then I was like, you know what? I should read some Virginia Woolf, especially the one that the Hours is based off of. So that's Mrs. Dalloway. Once again, you got a woman who realizes that she wants more from her life than what females are supposed to do in society at that time. And the benefit of this one, what makes this one more, like, what I like about it more than the previous two that have been kind of similar, is Virginia Woolf's writing. Her writing is unreal. Every other sentence in this book, I want to get tattooed on my body. Like, it's so poetic and just, I can't even put it into words how beautiful her writing is and how much, so much that she has to say as an author and as a person, how much it means to me and how much it resonates with me. It's great. So I would encourage all of you to read something by Virginia Woolf, just because it is the most beautiful writing, in my opinion, ever. Next, we have A Clockwork Orange. So I have 2 copies of this, as you can see, and they're both special and I need both of them, even though I have no room on my bookshelf. Can't get rid of either one of these copies. They are beautiful in their own ways. This one is like vintage 1962. It has a glossary of the language, which is invaluable. This is I read this probably in 2014, and I figured all editions of A Clockwork Orange had a dictionary in the back, because you kind of, for the first like 50 pages, you kind of need it, and then what's so cool about this book is, without realizing it, you start learning what all of the words are, and you feel like you've learned a new language by the end of it, because you're just reading these nonsense words without even noticing, because you know what they mean. So, and then I liked this book so much that I had to get this copy of it as well, because, I mean, that's cool looking, right? So the main character in this is 15 years old. His name is Alex. He's the worst. And in this story, like, once it gets dark, the criminals, like, take over. So you kind of have to be not outside after the sun goes down. And it talks about, like, good and evil. It talks about, like, the government's asking Alex and all of these other bad people to, like, redeem themselves, and at what cost is it worth doing that, and, like, what motivates people to do bad things. I know a lot of people don't like this book, but personally, I love it. Another book I have 2 copies of is 1984 by George Orwell. I have a really cool copy that has eyeballs that spell out 1984, and then I have my parents' mass market paperback version it's a commemorative 1984 edition. So this story, iconic, I'm sure you've all heard of it. It follows this guy named Winston who's trying to navigate this dystopian society, and this was written a long time ago, so 1984 was like very futuristic at the time, and the world's very futuristic. You got Big Brother watching your every move. It's just very relevant to modern day government in the United States, one could say. So this guy's trying to navigate, like, how to live a normal life with Big Brother watching you all the time. This is also a good one, I think, if you're looking to get into classics. This would be a good first one to read, because it's very fast-paced, has, you know, futuristic elements and stuff in it, and I've reread this twice, and I definitely would reread it again. So next, we're going back to Virginia Woolf. This is A Room of One's Own. Another great Virginia Woolf. Again, I'm biased because I love her. A Room of One's Own is very short. It's 117 pages, and this is basically like 2 essays put together, and I think part of, like, a quote on the back actually sums it up perfectly. It says, "Why is it," Virginia Woolf asks, "that men have always had power and influence and wealth and fame, while women have had nothing but children?" I love it. I love it. Women can do anything. Women can be anything. Fuck the patriarchy. There will be women Shakespeares in the future, Mrs. Woolf urges, provided women can find the first 2 keys to freedom, fixed incomes and rooms of their own. Next is The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. I think everyone knows what this is about, so I'm not going to get into it, but the main character, the kid, the guy, the teen, is just very annoying. He's very unlikable, and so it's very hard to get through this because you just spend so much time with him and he's just the worst. And I feel like it's like a weird kind of coming of age story, but yeah, I don't know. It's an easy read. I wanted to read it just because it's so iconic. I read it like 5 years ago. I'd reread it. It just wasn't my favorite. Next is one of my faves, definitely a 5-star, Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. Everyone talks about it for a good reason. It is so good. Definitely one that you should check out if you have not read it yet. So this edition also has an introduction by Neil Gaiman, which I love him as well. Yeah, this book is about a guy named Guy, and he's a fireman, and he burns books, because books are illegal now, because books equal freedom, books equal knowledge. And he meets this girl named Claire, who kind of talks to him about the past and why, you know, how people used to live and how books used to be good, and it kind of makes him start questioning his job and what he's doing, and it's just really good. It's really simple to read, quick to read, but it's just a good book about like how important books are and the power of books. Next, I have read Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. I've also read The Pearl by John Steinbeck in like 7th grade, but I don't have a copy of it. And I also didn't like it. But I'd reread it, because I don't remember, and I was also 11. So, Of Mice and Men is about these 2 guys named Georgie and Lenny who work on a ranch, and their dream has always been to like own an acre of land. And it's just kind of, it's talking about like family and how we perceive the world, how we can't control the actions of others. It's about the relationship between the 2 guys and Lenny's like unpredictable actions, and it's good. I definitely want to reread this. I have only read it the one time in like 9th or 10th grade, so it's been a hot second. Next, The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Yes, this is the movie cover, which I was okay with because this movie is fantastic. And look how it's so pretty. So, y'all know what this is about. It's about Nick Carraway, who's trying to figure out who Gatsby is, who this famous Gatsby is, and how he got so much money, and what's he doing. And Gatsby throws these big parties, and all these people come, but literally no one at the party knows who's throwing it. They don't know whose house it is. They just know like, oh, Gatsby. And then you have Nick's cousin, Daisy, is married to Tom, and he's the worst. Gatsby and Daisy had a thing in the past, and that's all I'm gonna say. If for some reason you don't know like why he's throwing these parties, I'm not gonna tell you, because I didn't know the first time I read it. I read it in 11th grade, I think, and then I've since read it at least once or twice. It is so good. It's basically, it's fun because Nick is like a self-proclaimed unreliable narrator, which is always fun. It's set in the 1920s, and I mean, they get into some mischief. Gatsby gets into some mischief, as like vague as that sounds. It's about the American dream and what that means to certain people and what lengths people will go to achieve that dream, and it's a good time, okay? Next is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I have only read this once. I think this embodies what people think of when they think of classics. It is long, it's slow, not that much happens. They kind of sit around and talk. But I actually really enjoyed this. This is... it's a story about Catherine and Heathcliff and just their 2 families. There's just a lot going on, but at the same time, there's not that much going on. It's, you know, one of those old books where people really just sat around and talked all day. That's what they did, and that's what this book is about. So not much happens because it's not like they just got in their truck and drove to the other person's house. So Heathcliff's kind of a problematic guy, but I still have a crush on him. I'm sorry if that's basic, but it's a good time. I would recommend this to people who are interested in this kind of thing. I think it's unfair, like I read this in high school, to like have people read this in high school, because if you're not into this style of writing and this kind of story, then this would be a miserable experience. But if you are into, like, you read Jane Austen and things like that, I think you would like this. I like it. I just would not recommend it to everybody. So this is To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. So this is about this family who lives in Scotland, and I read this a long time ago, to be honest, so I don't remember too much about it, but I know it was talking about like communication and secrets between people and like unspoken things, nonverbal communication, and like what, like the profoundness of silence. But it's Virginia Woolf, so it was poetic as hell, it was deep and meaningful as hell, it was beautiful, and it's a good time. I have also read Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. Don't remember much of it. I remember liking it at the time. I don't have a copy, so that's one. And Kaffir Boy, don't remember who wrote it. Really didn't like that one. Don't have a copy. And Heart of Darkness. Whew! Did not like that one. Don't have a copy. I've read it twice. I think I had to read it twice. You still couldn't get me to read that. You'd have to pay me. So those are the books that I own, the classics that I've read. I really like classics, the ones that resonate with me, obviously. Some classics I'm not interested in reading, but it's fun to have such universal books. I remember I decided to read Fahrenheit 451 back in 2014, and I also read Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut, and I read those because those were some of my grandpa's favorites and my dad's favorites, and they're just, so many people have read them, and the concepts in them are seen in television and film and referenced in other books, and it's just part of our culture, and so I just think they're fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know, please let me know what your favorite classic is and if you've been wanting to read any of these.